Why were people supporting it?
If you can bring out 500,000 people in the street, it looks like quite big on the TV. And if your social media feeds is flooded with that, it looks quite big. During 71, there were Rajakars. That means actually probably volunteer, but those who voluntarily enlisted in the paramilitary kind of groups formed by the Pakistani army. They were also on payrolls. So she used that word. There's a policy that if you are a graduate and if you have certificate, so if you go to a bank and against that certificate you are entitled to get like $1 million credit to start something of your own. But of course it doesn't happen. It's not so easy. Like I remember when we were coming out of the university, buying a computer was so important. It felt like opening a new world.
So what happened over a period of years that resulted to the fall of the government?
So initially the movement was about job quota. Too many quotas for freedom fighters. Not only their kids as well.
By the way, just a question. Party was named Army League? Army League. Is this mostly conservative party? Or like what was the political ideology?
More liberal one actually.
It's actually the more liberal one.
Yeah, if you have 1,000 influencers working actively promoting particular discourse, you can make it look like the whole country wants that. If the social media, see, those have become extension of American geopolitics as well. See, they have specific officers to engage with political parties like Facebook's.
Yep. All right, first of all, thank you for being here. And I'm really looking forward to having this conversation, especially since the last couple of years, Bangladesh has been all over the news and people's attention have been there. But before we get to where the country is right now or how it went there, I'm like, let's start with what Bangladesh is. Me being someone who has never been to Bangladesh, how would you explain Bangladesh to me?
First of all, thank you for having me.
Yep.
And coming to Nepal is like... well, it's been like my second home for many years. I've been coming to Nepal for like 20 years now.
Wow.
So it's always good to be here.
How did you come to Nepal when you started coming here earlier, in the early days?
First time I came for work. At the time, I used to work for a South Asian network on rivers and dams and communities affected by the rivers.
Okay.
The secretariat was here. So I was working at the secretariat for like 1 year, 2024 to 2005. And after the declaration of emergency, the secretariat was transferred to India. But since then, I've been coming to this country.
And before we start with what Bangladesh is, a short introduction on you as well. I mean, like, please define your work. What are you doing these days?
I've been in the NGOs and development sectors for most of my career, working with the local communities, farmers, helping them raise incomes, organizing farmers, claiming their rights over land. I worked with landless communities for many years. Also on policy issues, like learning from the communities and translating their experience into tangible, actionable alternative policies that have worked for many years, nationally and internationally. Monitored international financial institutions and its impact on local communities. Well, then I moved on to private sector, working in the food sector, not in the food processing, but working with agricultural value chain. So again, coming back to work with the farmers. And now I'm building an alternative finance startup. Non-credit, we will not provide credit. This is an interesting sector, a lot of digitizations happening, and there are many interesting models that can help the farming communities and also agricultural commodity traders. And I'm writing.
Yeah. I think that's one of the most significant part that you mentioned at last, like you're writing. How's the journey been so far?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I've been wanting to write for some time.
Yeah.
Never happened. And yeah, I mean, in some way, NGO work is not helpful for writing because NGO literature is often like going round and round, round and round. It's often like the same literature that you saw 10 years ago and coming back to again and going round and round in the same vocabulary. And so that didn't help. But once I left the NGO sector, that also gave me time to go back to reading. And this was also the same time I kind of disconnected myself from the social media. I was away from social media for 5-6 years.
Okay. Completely disconnected.
Yeah, completely disconnected, except for maybe messaging my friends. Yeah, I had my Facebook account or others, but I didn't log on, I think, since 2019. Well, now I'm back since I'm writing, so I'm posting my work and to see how people are responding to writing. And this disconnection, I mean, staying away from social media, I think it's been helpful.
Helpful in what sense?
Well, social media always engages you. Issues of immediacy, like you feel like responding, and also you're always dealing with like now.
Yeah.
Less time for contemplation or like what do you call historical retrospection or even theoretical analysis, because there's so much informations.
Yep.
Yeah. So at some point I realized that okay, my friends are putting their food photos and I'm just scrolling and
You should start writing, posting as well.
no, I just totally disconnected.
Yeah. Too much of food photos.
I had too much of food photos and the holidays and everything.
Yeah.
But since I've come back, I see social media. Well, now probably has more advertisement.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or maybe we don't even know what's advertisement and what's not. That distinction is gone totally.
Yep. And it used to be something we would be connected to. I mean, it's a relatively new phenomenon that we are following celebrities and then or other famous figures or news channels and stuff like that. Because earlier, the early version of social media, as I remember, it was basically you just connecting with friends. That was about it. Didn't care about news, didn't care about the advertisements or following celebrities or influencers. None of that existed, or even news
That
channels.
was a fun time. You could suddenly find your high school friend somewhere, suddenly just appear on your feed.
Yeah, plus, I mean, people would feel encouraged to post as well because now you see everything is glamorized and everything is so perfect. I mean, like, you think 10 times before posting a picture of yourself, right? And then that has created more divide, I guess.
Yeah. Encouraged or like compelled. Sometimes you feel compelled.
True. To post just for engagement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, and also wait for how many likes you get.
Oh, yeah. That's the most draining part of it, I know, if you get into that conversation. But I mean, it's all fun and good. So coming back to Bangladesh, how do you define Bangladesh to someone like me?
I think Bangladesh has come a long way. I mean, since 1971. The similarities with Bangladesh and Nepal is that, well, we are small countries. We used to be poor, like Bangladesh used to be considered, the term, the basket case or that. But over the last, since 1971, since Liberation War, and especially in the last 30 years, we have witnessed very rapid economic growth, which has improved the life quality of people. A number of things contributed to it. Many of the things happened organically, not necessarily because of very organized government efforts. No, there are many things that happened. People did it on their own. Because for a long time, estate has not been the enabler the way it should be. So people actually had to find their way to survive, to make their life better. So many poor people, they went to Middle East to work. Like we have 9 to 10 million people working in the Middle East and Malaysia and other places. And they send back money. And now, unlike the middle class or other people, like highly educated people who migrate to Western countries, who do not send back much. But these poor people, they send back and the money goes to the villages. And then we also, the RMG industry, it also contributed.
What industry?
Ready-made garments industry.
Okay, yeah, it's very big, right? I mean, like, it was back in 2015, 16. I used to produce a bit of merchandise or clothing, and then like that's when I got to know like Bangladesh is like one of the largest exporter of.
Yeah, I think right now we are the second largest exporter.
Okay.
In the world, so which is a big thing.
So is that what one of the industries that's driving the economy?
It's like exclusive. There's like the not like the. I mean, that is definitely the number one export item.
Okay.
And the second highest is like far below RMG. But what happens with RMG export is that it's very labor-intensive industry.
Yeah.
Especially many women work in this sector because they need the nimble fingers. And now they also send back money to the home. So these two, the workers in the Middle East, the expatriate and the remittance they send, and also the RNG workers. And the third thing I would add to it is often criticized, often rightly so, but the NGOs and the microcredit sector. What NGOs did is it made development efforts more focused, more targeted, because estate has, in our part of the world, estate has not been so efficient of working with the local communities. Now, what NGOs did, they brought the local communities to the policymakers, to engage with the policymakers. And microcredit, now let me give you an example.
Okay.
I think earlier we were talking about it. See, there's a policy that if you are a graduate and if you have certificate, so if you go to a bank and against that certificate, you are entitled to get like ৳1 million credit to start something of your own. But of course, it doesn't happen. It's not so easy. Like I remember when we were coming out of the university, buying a computer was so important. It felt like opening a new world. But then, well, banks also have programs to give you loan to buy computers. But I didn't find many young students getting loan from the banks to buy computers. Now, on the other hand, NGOs are going to the local communities, to the local women, and giving them money. Now, interest rates, high. There could have been better policies to make it more, and the interest rate could have been more favorable to the local people. But I think that even with that high interest rate, the sector has grown so much bigger and faster than the mainstream banking system.
एक्सरसाइज गरेर राम्रो र हेल्दी बडी मात्र बन्दैन, तपाईको मेन्टल हेल्थको लागि पनि एक्सरसाइजले धेरै हेल्प गर्छ। र तपाई बिगिनर हो र जिम जान अप्ठ्यारो लाग्छ और जिम गएर के गर्ने भनेर आतिनु भएको छ भने नो नीड टु वरी। द फिजिक वर्कशपमा तपाईलाई एक्सपिरियन्स ट्रेनर्सले फुल्ली गाइड गरिदिनुहुन्छ विथ प्रपर वर्कआउट र डायट प्लान जुन तपाईको लागि मात्र बनेको हुन्छ।
ट्रेनरहरू अनि फ्रन्ट डेस्कको ब्रदरहरू चाहिँ एकदम हेल्पफुल हुनुहुन्छ, एकदम फ्रेन्डली हुनुहुन्छ हैन, राम्रोसँग सिकाउनुहुन्छ, इन्भाइरोमेन्ट राम्रो छ।
मोस्ट भाइ भएको जिम लाग्छ। कस्तो फिल भयो, म सकिरहेको छु नि तर तिनीहरूले यति मोटिभेट गरिरहेको छ, म किन सकिरहेको छैन।
मेन त ट्रेनरहरू पनि एकदमै हेल्पफुल, सिकाउने जस्ट एकदम होमली इन्भाइरोमेन्ट भेटेको छ।
स्टार्टिङ एट जस्ट ₹2500 पर मन्थ फर डे टाइम मेम्बरसिप्स। यहाँ अरू मेम्बरसिप्स पनि अफोर्डेबल नै छ। सो इफ तपाईँ कुमारी पाटी, मैती देवी, बानेश्वर और महाराजगञ्जतिर बस्नुहुन्छ भने हाम्रो ब्रान्चेस यो सबै लोकेसन्समा छ र तपाईँले 2 days फ्री ट्रायल पनि लिन सक्नुहुन्छ बिफोर जोइनिङ। स्टार्ट योर फिटनेस जर्नी टुडे एन्ड कन्ट्याक्ट अस अन आवर फेसबुक, इन्स्टाग्राम पेजेस or you can directly call us for more details and current offers.
So now you have 3 sources of investments that coming into the rural areas. Now what it is doing is that now the farming communities, the people in the villages, now they have money to do things. They can buy land, they can buy a cow, they can invest in agriculture or to send their kids to school or maybe to buy shampoo. Now, talking about shampoos or like other small things, that means there are now Bangladeshi companies who produce this stuff. Like without any systematic planning, Bangladesh economy has become an import substitution economy. So Bangladeshi industrial sector now produce almost everything we need, and that has in general generated a lot more employment, not only informal sector, but that has created a industrial strata of work, and a lot less dependent on import.
Apart from this, how is the country in terms of people and culture, demography or geography in general?
We're not mountains. We are a flat land, and maybe you will remember for many years Bangladesh was known in the Western media in general as a land of floods. So the only time Bangladesh would get media coverage in international media was when we had floods. But things have changed now because people are now working hard. Now there's a lot of development, a lot of infrastructure coming up. The food production has gone up. Like in 1971, when we won our independence, our population was, I think, 70 million. And now we have 180 million. And still we are self-sufficient in food, and which is a great achievement, actually. And there are many agricultural sectors where we are one of the top producers in the world in terms of volume. And this happened despite Bangladesh being a small country, a very densely populated country. So there's a lot of achievement Bangladesh has. I mean, in general, often, maybe it's also the case in Nepal here that nowadays we have so much access to information about everything. We know what's happening in New York or in Toronto. So people want Bangladesh to become Singapore like tomorrow.
Yeah. That's the same problem that we are dealing with as well.
Yeah. But it doesn't happen overnight. So it's important that we also learn to appreciate the economic development that we have had over the last 30, 40 years. That is an important thing.
Can you take me through the history of the separation? Because I'm not very aware of that. And I think the audience will learn a lot as well. What was separation for Bangladesh like?
So the British, when they left, like in 47, so they left a strange map. Like, so you have India on the eastern side you have a piece of land, and on the western side you have another piece of land. And together they are called Pakistan and an independent country.
Yeah.
So it was based on religion and other things. Now, it's a weird map in itself. Now, what happened? Bangladesh, as an agricultural country, became a producer of raw materials, and Pakistanis were dominating, and it was also racial. It was like we were not considered like pure Muslims kind of thing, well, how Islam arrived in Bangladesh part or Bengal Delta, that itself is an interesting discussion. So when after the 1950s, the farming communities, they were sending their children to universities, getting educated. But then they found out we are not getting the right jobs. Or like the Pakistanis, they want Urdu to become the national language. Although Bangladeshis are, of course, predominantly Bengali speaking.
What's the religion division? I mean, like, how is
like right now?
Religion, yeah?
Right now?
Yeah.
Still predominantly Islamic country.
What percentages roughly?
90 plus.
Okay, that's massive. Yeah.
I think 90 plus.
Okay.
But the number of Hindus have been going down. It used to be in double digit, but it's no longer. So in the 1960s, when the emerging Bengali middle class and others, they realized that, in 47, we became independent, colonialism ended, but there's a new colonialism, like there's wealth transfer from Bangladesh to the Western Pakistan. So people also wanted representation and say in the government policy making and everything. And of course, the Pakistani ruling class, they were not giving it. And since 1958, Pakistan has been ruled by military. So the democratic culture also did not evolve. Now, after the 1970 election, the Army League at that time, the main political party,
What's the name of the main political party?
Army League.
Okay.
And they won overwhelmingly in Bengal. In Bangladesh part, East Pakistan part. So of course they had the claim that to rule the country, to take control of the legislative agency. Now Pakistani's ruling class and military, they didn't want to hand over the transfer to us. And 1971, in March, the Pakistani military launched a military operation to, what would be the word, to, you might have to edit later. I'm looking for a word.
Okay, what did they do? Took over? Destabilize?
No,
Is it a positive or a negative word?
very negative.
Okay.
Like, so the army launched an operation.
What kind of operation was that?
From killing students at Dhaka University to killing police, and at that time it was the border forces, because they were the local people who had some kind of weapons, and also the prominent activists who were in favor of liberation, and then they started to go all around the country. And 3 million people lost their lives. Now, 1970s, it was also time of Cold War.
True.
So for a country like Bangladesh to become independent, so geopolitics also came into play. So India, they helped our government in many different ways. International diplomacy trained our liberation forces, and also our there was a government in exile that was formed in India, and Russia played, at that time it was Soviet Union, they played a very key role. Like in December, when the Oracle Mukti Bahini, the freedom fighters, when they were like about to win, about to enter Dhaka, so the Americans, they put resolution in the United Nations Security Council for a ceasefire when Bangladeshis were just about to win.
Okay.
So they wanted some kind of a Korea kind of solution, like a freeze of the conflict.
Okay.
So Soviet Union vetoed the American resolution twice, and that bought us time to come to Dhaka and win the war. So on 16 December 1971, we won the war. The Pakistani army surrendered.
But by the way, you said that the initiation of this whole conflict was Pakistani armies or Pakistani elites trying to enforce or dominate people of all ranks or all kind of people, right? So why was that? What was the initiation or the reason behind that? I mean, like, why did the conflict even start from Pakistan's side?
Well, there was a sense of racial superiority among them. Like
Okay.
they did not consider us like pure Muslims.
Okay, so it was basically racism within the Islam community in a way.
Yeah, in a way.
Okay.
Because Islam emerged in Bangladesh in a very different way. Like it did not necessarily came from like the West.
Okay.
Bengali Muslims emerged in the rice fields. So the Bengali now, like Pakistan and in other places, they probably considered that Islam came like from the West.
West as in relative to in Middle East. For us?
Yeah. West in that
Not the
sense,
West that we
yeah,
talk
not
about.
the West that we did. And it was also considered that many of the Bangladeshi Muslims were converted from the Hindus. So the Pakistanis, they looked upon us and they thought they are not like pure Muslims. So that played a part. And at the same time, the elite, they also did not want to let go of the surplus extraction that they had here, the agricultural surplus, and that was going to West Pakistan. They did not want it to let it go. But the emerging middle class and the surplus that's coming from the farming community, of course, they wanted to have their own say and also assert our own culture, to get jobs and to speak Bangla.
What was the after independence? What was the reformation of the government like, or how did the country change politically?
Immediately after 71, it wasn't easy.
Okay.
Bangladesh was a poor country and a war-devastated country. The central bank didn't have like any money or foreign currency, and the whole country was ravaged by war, so a lot of reconstruction was required. And the Cold War dynamics didn't make it easy. Like the US and others, they didn't even recognize Bangladesh as a country, as is the Middle East. Like the Middle Eastern countries, they recognized Bangladesh as an independent country only in 1975.
Okay.
After the founder of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, was assassinated, not before that. So that was the reconstruction immediately after the war. That was a difficult time.
How was the founder of the country assassinated? What do you mean by that?
In 1975, there was a military coup.
Okay.
See, the army that we inherited, well, all of them or most of them were trained during the Pakistan times. And the Pakistani army was so close to American army. At that time, Pakistan was part of a number of American-led military alliances. So there was that tension within the military itself, like those who fought in the Liberation War. And there were also other military officers who got stuck in Pakistan, who returned to Bangladesh after 71. So the tension was there. And at the same time, the old Muslim elites, they were also losing their power. So it was mostly a political party and the people coming from the farming classes who are taking over the state. And interestingly enough, I think we can definitely say that Bangladesh was founded by farmers. And in that sense, I can also add probably Bangladeshis are the only ethnic people in South Asia to earn their own state. Like after 47. So British left. And then you have India, Pakistan and others. But for Bangladesh, well, we had to fight against Pakistan for autonomy for many years. And then we had to fight a real war. And only then we became independent. So as an ethnic people, Bangladeshis or Bengalis are the only people to have earned their own state in South Asia.
So, I mean, like when we are talking about post-independence and then the tussle between Pakistan and within the country of Bangladesh itself, with all of these conversations going on, what was going on in India or India, Bangladesh? What was the relation like?
Let's pass this.
Let's pass this one.
Let's
Okay.
pass this.
So, moving on, what happened after that?
Because if we don't, we pass, then like, you will edit it out. See, 16 December, when Bangladesh, the Pakistani army surrendered, they surrendered to Indian army. Now the thing is, why not? It was a three-party deal. It wasn't impossible because, see, Soviet Union was already involved. Without their veto at the United Nations, Bangladesh could not have been independent. It could have become a Korea kind of situation.
Right.
So Indians were also in a hurry to score against Pakistan. Okay. That's why they rushed for that surrender treaty. So now if we look into Hindi films, many recent film has come out that deals with the 1971 issues. They talk about it like an India-Pakistan war. But Indian military entered into the conflict quite late. Well, the train facilitated, but many of the weapons actually came from the Soviet Union. And the early fights, or bulk of the fights were by the Bangladeshi Mukti Bahini, the like partisans, and only in the later phases in December, Indian army entered into war.
त्यसको रेकर्डिङ चाहिँ छोड्दै हुन्छ बरु त्यहाँ भइरहेको ब्याकअप चाहिँ नल्याउँछ अहिलेको लागि है त्यो अफ भइरहेछ बेला बेलामा यो पार्ट चाहिँ एडिट आउट गर्ने है ठ्याक्क याद गरेर सो shall we start from there?
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened after the assassination of the founder? What was when did Bangladesh, because it's coming fresh out of a separation, and then there's a conflict between Pakistan and the home country itself, and then like within all of this happening in a period of from 71 to 74, the founder being assassinated.
75.
75. So in a period of 4 years.
Even less than like 4 years.
So when did the government of Bangladesh form, or what was the structure like earlier?
It was a parliamentary system. We had to draft new constitutions. So first there was constitution and assembly, and then there was parliamentary election. So we had a new constitution, parliamentary British style system. But the conflict between the old Muslim elites and the emerging middle class, those who are coming from the farming, and at the same time within army, the Pakistani elements that already remained, that made reconstruction, post-war reconstruction difficult. Post-war, like polity or state building, difficult, because in a new country you have to build institutions, and that requires a lot of consensus. So at the time, since like the Western Bloc, they were not supporting Bangladesh, recognizing Bangladesh. So Bangladesh had to side with the Soviet bloc and the non-aligned movements. So at that time, we also and there was also desire to go for a socialist kind of economy. Now to take such radical decisions, you need time and like more consensus. But before that happened, so the army, the Pakistani elements within the army, and based on various declassified documents, now we can say that the Americans are also involved. Sheikh Mujib was assassinated. And then we had a military dictator for a few years. And a new party was born. A new party that was born like inside the cantonment. So the new party leader, the new military dictator, he contested in a presidential election while being the army chief. That was in 1979.
What was the party?
The BNP, one of the two largest party now. Well, since then they have become socially acceptable, and they now have a large support base, and but you cannot erase history, where they come from.
So,
and then in 1981, the founder of BNP, the military dictator, he himself was assassinated. And then briefly we had an election, and then in 82, the army chief, General Ershad, he took over. No, he comes from a different kind of military background. Like during 71, he was in Pakistan. He returned to Bangladesh after the war. So 82 onwards, we had another 8-9 years of autocratic rule. Yeah, there were elections and huge popular movements. So at that time, BNP very actively participated in the people's movement to restore democracy. And that's how gradually they became more legitimized within the political system. So then in 1990, there was huge people's uprising, and the General Ershad, he had to leave.
Why was that so?
Well, first of all, he was illegitimate. He was a military dictator. And people wanted democratic system.
Was it any individual single event that sparked this whole revolution, or was it just building up slowly?
Building up slowly, but also a number of things came into effect around the same time, like the first Gulf War.
Okay.
Because of the first Gulf War, prices of many things went up. So there are already discontent within the population, and that Middle East situation made it worse. So everything came together, and at the same time, the parties, they also pushed for it. So he had to resign. Then a consensus kind of system was formed to like a caretaker government, and to hold the next election. And that caretaker government continued for some time. But you cannot continue with that system for too long, because
It's an interim government, right? How do you define it?
well, at that time it was called caretaker government,
Okay.
not like interim government,
Okay.
not like now. So 1990 was a transitional time. So at that
But
time,
effectively, that was, I mean, like, that was an interim government, effectively, just with a different name, or like, I mean, like, how is it different?
even conceptually it was different, because they had only one task, that is to hold the next election.
Okay.
And there was election in 91.
And then what happened after 91?
Oh, after 91. So the BNP, the party that was born in a cantonment, they won the election. And this was also high time for donor-supported NGOs in Bangladesh. They were also quite big, quite powerful. Huge funding was coming, and they were also doing good work. But often working as a parallel to the government, because many of the services government was failing to deliver, so NGOs took over. So that also gave them stake in the political system. Now, there are many unresolved issues, like during 71, many atrocities happened. Like many local people collaborated with Pakistani military, collaborated not only in a political sense, but also committing violent activities. Those needed to be resolved. And also the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Now, he was assassinated as the head of a state. So you need to you need to bring it to justice, right? So from 75 till 91, in Bangladesh, we consider 91 like, almost like a second start kind of a thing. So those things were brewing. The atrocities committed during the 71 war, and those who committed, they need to be tried. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the founder of the nation, he was assassinated, but his killers were never tried since the 90s. So between the two main parties, the League and the BNP, so that tension remained. Now, the caretaker system that was brought on in 1991, the idea was that it continues for some time. So during the next election cycle, the incumbent party, BNP, they refused to they refused to hold the election under a caretaker government. So they did it on their own, and Awami League refused to participate. And then Awami League organized his public protest, and BNP had to go, and new caretaker government came, and they held election, and Awami League won that election. So it was the second time Awami League was in power, like since 1975. So many of the unfinished agendas of 71, trial of the war criminals, and also trying the killers of Sheikh Mujib, everything came into the front. And they started that process. But at that time, Awami League didn't have a strong legislative mandate. Like in the parliament, they did not have very strong majority, like to take very key decisions. You often need 2/3 of the 2/3 support in the parliament. So they didn't have that. So they started the trial of the killers of Sheikh Mujib, but they did not go for trying the war criminals because they didn't have a strong parliamentary majority. But later on, I'm coming later on, when they came back to power in 2009. Well, at that time, they had a stronger parliamentary majority, and they decided to set up International War Crimes Tribunal. And during their earlier rule, from 1996 to 2001, the trial of the killer of the Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, that also went ahead. But subsequent government, like between 2001 and 2006, they did not execute the court verdicts. So when Awami League came back to power, they executed the court verdicts and initiated the War Crimes Tribunal. And it wasn't an easy thing. Like, to give you an example, the night the first carrying out of the execution happened, American Foreign Minister John Kerry, Secretary of State, he made a call to our Prime Minister. So, to trying the war criminals, that was not only a national thing, that was also an international thing. So it was a challenging thing.
Who was the president, by the way, Prime Minister, by the way?
Sheikh Hasina.
Okay, yeah. So she's been in power since when?
She's been in power since 2009.
Okay, so right when they won again, I mean, like, she was in power.
Yeah.
Okay.
And since 2009, she has been in power for quite a long time.
Yeah. How is the process like? Because here you get to do, and like on paper you get to do 2 terms, but then like none of the prime ministers none of the government have completed either of the terms. But what is the process like? Because since 2009 to how many years is it?
Well, in a parliamentary system, there's no such binding. In a presidential system, you often have, like in the US system or others. But like right now, the reform discussions that are happening in Bangladesh, there's proposal to put restrictions on that as well. But at that time, we didn't have.
Okay. And then what happened? 2009, and like the whole trial over war crimes in a way, or how do you say that? I mean, like, what was the execution war? Okay.
Yeah, War Crimes Tribunal.
Yeah. And it was probably a very tricky situation with the international community or the West having an interest in that.
Yeah. Like European Union, they engaged with the government for quite some time, and then like some of the countries had reservations about capital punishment and others. So those issues also came. And our government's position was that is the law of the land. We cannot just change policy. I mean, in your country, you may not have capital punishment, but we have it. Many other Western countries, like US, also has it. You cannot ask us to change it just because we are trying war criminals. So EU agreed. So it went ahead, and the court convicted a number of war criminals, and the convictions were carried out.
So, I mean, like, what significant events happened after that? Because I'm trying to tie it up with what happened during the political turmoil. So, what were the events that led to that?
Now, I would say, now, during that time, the War Crimes Tribunal and everything, see, the Liberation War happened in 1971, and you are dealing with many of the unresolved issues of 71 in 2009, 10, 12, 13, 14. So by that time, demography changed a lot. Economic development was happening, not necessarily because of government initiatives, as I described earlier, but the younger generations, like his proportion of the population was also now is like under 30. They needed more forward-looking messages, the forward-looking visions. So the dilemma was you cannot, or you do not go forward without resolving, rectifying the sins of the past. But at the same time, you also need vision for the future. Otherwise, how do you move forward? So this was a time so Bangladesh became stuck between these dynamics, how to deal with the past and what vision we set. Now, what Awami League tried to do, they formulated a futuristic vision, but based on like developing infrastructure, like developing big infrastructure. The Padda Breeze, like the World Bank, they suspended the funding. So for our government to take a decision to build such a big project with only internal revenue, well, that was a big decision, but also an interesting moment that countries like Bangladesh can embark on large development projects on its own. So that kind of futuristic vision was there. But building large infrastructures, well, that may be a policy vision. But for people, you need more nuanced ideas, dreams. You cannot just continue to dwell on the past. Yeah. So in that sense, I only got kind of going round and round within the same old rhetorics. And the younger generations, they were not finding places within the political party or other decision-making places in a state where they should be. So that kind of disjuncture was there. Mm-hmm. So I think that was the time Awami League was alienated from the younger population.
What year was this?
Not necessarily year, like the decade.
Okay. After 2010?
2010 onwards.
Okay. Yeah. The last decade. So
10, 15 years. 10, 15 years is a long time.
Yeah. So what do you mean when you say that the main party was alienated?
See, you have large infrastructure programs. You're building bridges, highways, flyovers. Fine. You need that for a vibrant economy, port, airports, and others, industries. But we're in a different time. People are connected to global informations all the time. See, youths now have their phones and they know what's happening in Sydney or like in Toronto. And but the political leadership was aging, and they were from the 70s era. So the vision and the kind of language the older generation had, and the kind of vision the younger people wanted, that didn't match. Younger generation also wanted to resolve the past, but then they also want to go to the future.
Yeah.
So this is where I think a disjuncture happened.
So that in itself was the initiating point of the differences that grew over time.
And different political elements, of course, weaponized it in different way.
So what happened over a period of years that resulted to the fall of the government?
So initially the movement was about job quota, like there were too many quotas, or like quotas for freedom fighters, not only their kids and their kids as well. And also we had too many private universities.
By the way, just a question: is this party, what was name, Army League?
Army League.
Is this mostly conservative party, or like what was the political ideology?
Oh no, more liberal one actually.
It's actually the more liberal one.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 71 values, or the values that led to the freedom movement, that was what's the English word for religious?
Religious what? Religious tolerance?
Oh no, I get it. They were a pro-secular party.
Okay.
See, they were they were pro-secular party, and they also installed a version of socialistic vision, not necessarily like Soviet kind of thing, but in a social justice sense.
Was it pro-West or pro-Soviet?
Well, early years after the 71, they had to side with the Soviet Union and the non-aligned movement. But then after the 1990s and 2000, when the economic reality changed and Soviet Union collapsed, you have to work with various other powerful geopolitical powers. Although China has been our number one trading partner for many years, but in terms of soft power within the country, the elites remained very westernized.
Okay. And then what happened? So, because I remember the whole issue about job quotas, and because I mean that was one of the biggest issues that caused this whole thing, as per my understanding, because a lot of unemployment's happening and people get frustrated and they're not getting jobs, so they were revolting.
Like too many private universities, too many graduates and not enough jobs.
Yep.
And those quotas didn't sound well.
Yeah.
Now, so at one point, these things went to court, and there was court verdict that resolved these issues, that the quota should go. It should be based on merit.
When was this? When did this happen?
Immediately before the movement escalated.
The last time, right?
Yeah. Recent.
So up until this time, I mean, the decade when Sheikh Hasina was running the country, up until this whole quota thing, there was not much uprising, or people were satisfied, or like what was the scene like? within this period before it turned chaotic?
Well, there were discontents, like there was 2 elections in between, since 2009 till now. Those were not ideal.
Not ideal as in?
Now, main opposition party boycotted the election. They wanted a caretaker government kind of thing.
Why? Why was that?
See, between the major elites, democracy is not only about like votes. It's also about different powerful elements within the country to have a settlement or understanding.
Yep.
So the country hasn't arrived to that point. So the main parties were not trusting each other. And there were examples in the past that you cannot trust. Now, constitutionally, the caretaker government was not there, no longer there. So the main opposition party, they boycotted the election. Now, we still continued with the election. So the participation of voters were low. And the next election, the one immediate before the movement, similar thing happened. Now, vote in a popular consciousness is a very big thing in South Asia. That's like the only time you get to express what you want. Whether your expression is respected by the parties or not, that's different.
Yep.
So in the immediate last election, the voter participation was very low.
What year are we talking about?
2024.
Okay, so post all of this, right? Okay.
Just before the movement.
Oh, okay. Just before the movement. And
so the discontent was there.
yeah.
And now, so what initially started as a job quota movement, now
it was purely for the job quotas, right? The discontentment was mostly, I mean, there might be other stuff, but this was the main agenda.
Yeah.
Started with this. And the court has also ruled in favor of the people that the quota shouldn't be there.
Yes.
And then what happened? Why was it not, the court orders not being followed?
Oh, no. Not being followed. It wasn't that it not being followed.
Okay.
Like within a few days, maybe within like 2 days, the movement changed their demands. Now they wanted, they had only one demand.
What was that?
The Prime Minister to go.
Why all of a sudden? Because like now the courts are in favor of what you are demanding, and the Prime Minister is
That
like,
is a
okay,
question
let's make it happen.
I would also ask.
Yeah.
I mean, the movement that is started for quota and which is like resolved by the court in a legal way. So
The demands just changed.
the demand just changed, and very radically. Now, if you want the incumbent government to go,
But why? I mean, like, what was their reasoning for wanting the Prime Minister to be changed?
okay, so now, so the job quota issue is now gone. Now
Yeah.
you have only one demand,
And this was like back to back immediately with a new demand?
very immediately.
So, I mean, like, how do people of Bangladesh see this as a whole? I mean, like, was it the movement started because of job quota, or they just use job quota as an excuse to throw out the government? How does the people of Bangladesh view this? It's a very complicated question.
Yeah, complicated, but then also not.
Yeah,
The
okay.
thing is, when you have a political atmosphere where there are a lot of discontent, often you rally around a specific issue not because you care so much for that issue, but rather that becomes a vehicle for you to to express
Some larger goals.
some larger goals and other grievances.
Right.
So that also happened. So the disenfranchised political parties and others, so now they came into the front in the public spaces. So this is when things took turned. Well, agitation intensified.
What was it like in the beginning? I mean, like, how did it start? So from my understanding, they had certain demands fulfilled by the court, and the prime minister agrees, and then now they are demanding the prime minister to resign. What does the initiation of the movement that really sparked? I mean, like, how did it start? What happened when we say like people were revolting? I mean, it must have started in a smaller level, right? So what was it like in the beginning?
Well, when they demanded that one demand, I mean, again, announced that one demand, well, for the ruling party, I mean, for the government, they also came down a bit hard. And also the public messaging they had, well, that wasn't good enough. I mean, like...
What was the messaging?
Well, the movement that was challenging our government, like in the public event, she was calling them kids of the collaborators of the 70s.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
So that didn't go well.
I think that that was a huge mistake that enraged a lot of people.
That enraged some people, and it was not good optics.
What was the exact? There was a precise word that she used, right? And everybody, all the Bangladeshi people were like, "I am that."
Well, that's
a different one.
No. Okay. That's a very well-known word.
Yeah,
Rajakar.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah.
During 71, there were Rajakars. That means actually probably volunteer, but those who voluntarily enlisted in the paramilitary kind of groups formed by the Pakistani army.
Okay.
They were also on payrolls.
Okay.
So she used that word. Now the thing is, after the movement, once she was ousted, and the young political leaders, those who were coming into the front, so now we see many of them, or most of them, actually belongs to various Islamist groups. And many of them belong to the student wing of the Jamaat-e-Islami, who collaborated with the Pakistani military during 71. So there's also...
You mean the people who contributed to the recent uprising, they were associated with the Pakistani military in 71?
Some young leaders
Okay.
Who led the student movements turned out to be member of the student wing of Jamaat-e-Islami, which was not known, or they did not reveal during the movement, which only came out after the movement. So then there was also public discussions or like discourse, or maybe she didn't say anything wrong in a rhetorical sense. Now the question is, why did they have to hide their identity? Did they think that if the identity comes out, general people wouldn't support them?
Yeah, they lose their credibility, right? That must have been the reason.
Yeah, we have to ask, why? And also many of them turned out to be members of Islamist groups called Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is banned even now.
Okay.
But after the formation of the interim government, well, they are mobilizing publicly, and which is being tolerated. And then immediately after the revolution, they started to dismantle cultural icons. Now, they associated with Awami League. But the thing is, during 71, Awami League was the party who led the freedom movement. So it's kind of the same. So all around the country, they were dismantling them. And then after dismantling the icons like statues and others, then they went after like names, like universities, colleges, or like dorms, they also had names from many of those were named after leaders or cultural icons from 1971 or others. Now they're all being changed. And there's also another pattern, like if something is named after a Hindu cultural icon, that's being also changed. Yeah, to give an example, I also wrote about it. The famous Bengali actress Suchitra Sen, like Ava Gardner of Bengal. So she was born in Eastern Bengal, in our part, in Pabna district. And then after the partition, she went to West Bengal. And of course, for both Bengal, she's the Mahanaika. Now, in Pabna, there was a female dormitory named after her. And recently the name was changed.
Okay.
Like in Rajshahi University, many of the names of the dormitories or administrative buildings were changed. Now, so they're accusing Hasina of being fascist.
But for what reason?
Well, we go there a little late. First, let me talk about no. So she's fascist, fine. Now, in Rajshahi University, there was a facility that was named after Sayyid Nazrul Islam, who was the acting president during 1971 war. The name has been changed. Several other names has been changed. And you know what kind of name has been replaced with? Sometimes they couldn't even find a new name. So there was one building that was renamed as building number 2. So that has been a common pattern that's going on. And there's also very heightened rhetoric coming from the youth leadership, very heightened anti-India rhetoric. Now, living in the shadow of a big neighbor is never easy. That people in Nepal know, we know. But in a diplomatic sense, or this is a transitional government, right? So what is the point of like publicly going after India? There might be, well, there definitely are legitimate grievances, but as a national issue, as a diplomatic issue, you deal with it in a more nuanced way. So that's not happening. At the same time, the interim government, now they're being, the perception is that they're being too close to Pakistan. Too many deals are being signed, like Pakistani ambassador is meeting some institutions or others like all the time. It's like the number of meetings he has had since the revolution, probably Pakistani embassy didn't have in the last 20 years.
You mean in the past 1 year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, there's definitely a question. I mean, why is that? Because there are many unresolved issues with them as well, because they haven't formally apologized for the genocide in 1971 yet. So there is that. And also, if the idea is about coming out of the shadow of Indian economic dominance, what does actually Pakistan offer? There's like a broken economy. There's IMF controls it in that sense, right? So, number of deals in being signed, some of the things we have been importing from Pakistan, India. Now suddenly the government wants to import from Pakistan. Now the question is, if it's economically more viable or more beneficial nationally, yeah, we should do that. But there's no transparency about this.
But do they claim
decisions.
it's better for the economy that way? Do they claim that?
No, rhetoric is more about, we have been too much dominated by India, so we are going like beyond India. So that's not a nuanced diplomatic way to talk, especially for an interim government. And then, so it's been a youth-led, student-led movement. But after the movement, in the leadership positions, those who are running the country in different institutions, you see like very senior people. I mean, those who retired, some of them like retired 20 years ago. And how is there any youth agenda? That kind of question comes up.
So, in a way, it seems like these veteran politicians used youth as a means to push their agenda further?
You can probably say that, and that kind of analysis is coming out as well. Like, see prominent scholars like Jeffrey Sachs, he has written about it. He says it's been a regime change and even United Nations should investigate. So that's being discussed.
Yeah.
And but those are always more nuanced things, and like we do not get black and white evidences like immediately. Often we get the whole story far later. But more immediate question that we can ask is how are decisions being made? Like, and also some of the agendas being prioritized, like based on what? Like the current government has been discussing opening a corridor to the Rohingya and the Arakan regions, a very important humanitarian issue, but also very sensitive geopolitical issue. Now, what does opening a corridor to Arakan means? Because the region is infested with insurgents or militants, whichever perspective you come from. And does an unelected government have the mandate to take such radical decisions? Even in recent times, the military chief actually came out publicly saying that we'll participate into it only if it comes with real mandate, like coming from an elected government. So there is that difference of opinion between the military and the interim government. And see, the Jamaat Islami, the party who collaborated with the Pakistanis during 1971, and since then they haven't won more than 5% vote in any election. So that party goes to Chinese embassy, meet Chinese diplomatic officials, and talk about a Muslim independent Arakan.
So it's they're demanding for a separate state, Muslim state.
That's what they talked about.
But why? What do they get in return? So that because they're not in the national elections, they're not getting more than 5%. So they want an independent state or something like that where they can have total control or majority control in the voting.
Well, definitely there are geopolitical things that to play, but immediate things could be to appease their Islamist electoral base.
Okay,
that could be in their immediate interest. But even for that, to go such a way, see China being the number one trading partner of Bangladesh, and we know China has so much stake in Burma, Myanmar, and then a party that has never won more than 5% vote goes to the diplomats and say, "Oh, we want a." It's like asking for Kosovo 2.0, and there's not enough public discussions or discourse about it in national media.
Let me ask you a bit about the whole revolutionary process itself, right? Because I don't want the audience to go and check another video just to understand what went down. So if you can just describe in summary what happened between the time when the Supreme Court said and gave specific orders about the quota system to the end of the revolution. Like, how did it build up? What happened? How was the chaotic situation like?
Well, after the court verdict,
Yeah.
things changed like dramatically and escalated dramatically, and it's not proportional in that sense, because the demand was for job quota, and the highest court did come out with did sided with their demand. So it was only up to the government to implement that, and suddenly, like within days, the demand changes that the head of the government must go.
But what was the reasoning like? I mean, like, they must have a specific reason, because you've been lobbying for one thing, one agenda for a long time, and once you achieve that, you completely switch on to a new agenda. They must have given some reason why they wanted the prime minister out.
So, well, then the other rhetorics or other accusations started to come out, like whether the elections conducted under her was legitimate or not, or like human rights violations and forced disappearance of political activists and others. Many of them could be legit, should be investigated in a transparent way. But the thing is, for a youth and student movement to start with a very specific demand, almost non-political in that sense, because, see, asking for quota reform that's an administrative reform, not such a political demand.
Yeah.
And then suddenly such a radical shift, where you term the prime minister as like fascist, too loaded a word, and all other accusations that has been made against her and her party over the last decade, they all came out around the same time.
Okay. So this was okay.
And then there was, of course, like nationwide agitations and movements being organized.
Did her speech and using that specific word, I mean, like, did that contribute to the movement being more radical?
Yes and no, because
let me tell you why. Why I'm asking this is, from what I understand, because I haven't looked too deep into it. I've watched a few news articles, watched a few videos about what's going on in Bangladesh, what was going on in Bangladesh during the movement. It was all over the news, right? So from my perspective, it seemed like it started with the job quota thing. And then it was more of a... started with the job quota thing, and then... what were we talking about, by the way? Specifically?
Rajakar, the word.
Yeah. So it started with the job quota thing, and then, like, you know, people were upset regarding the job quota because of unemployment and stuff like that. And then some things happen, and she goes on and gives this very infamous speech where she uses the word, and that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. At least that's what I see from my perspective.
Yeah.
Was it the case or not?
What if it was not amplified by the social media, if I ask? Because we're in a time, see, news cycle is now do not depend on television.
Not at all.
It depends on social media and others. So the traffic that was driving that race, how organic was that? That is something we have to ask and investigate.
Mm.
But like, if you go to Bangladesh right now and start talking to people saying, are you comfortable or feel proud to say, I am a Rajakar? You won't find many.
Okay. So was it a lot of...
Not many, I mean, like most people will be disgusted.
Yeah, because the strange thing is...
So the question is, how did it become such loaded, agitating point? And who got agitated?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the question. So if it's the social media, so who was controlling the algorithm? Who was the traffic that was being, that was driving that discourse to come, into your feed like every day?
Yeah.
Was it organic? That is something one has to ask.
Yeah, because we live in a very interesting times where we make up our mind, or we have a perception. We build our perception based on what we see on the internet, right? And then again, rightfully what you said, in my perception, in my view, it seemed like everybody loved that word and everybody was like revolting using that word or identifying that word.
But go to Bangladesh now
Yeah.
and ask people on the street,
Yeah.
hey, if I call you Razakar, you might even...
It's a very offensive word.
Of course, you might get punched.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, when you say who was controlling the algorithm, was it these, let's say, social media companies or, playing around with the algorithm, or influential social media influencers within Bangladesh that played a huge part? And I mean, like, this would mean it was driven organically. Because I mean, like, yes, the influencers might have agenda,
See,
but
on
then
social
people follow
media,
along.
nothing is 100% organic.
Yeah.
Because they have their own the digital platforms. They are designed to drive core emotions, rage, hatred, and others. So they are already designed to escalate these. So, of course, there are some things organic. But the thing is, in a country of 180 million, if you have 1,000 influencers working actively promoting particular discourse, you can make it look like the whole country wants that.
Yeah.
And then if the social media platform we are talking about, see, those have become extension of American geopolitics as well.
100%.
So, see, they have specific officers to engage with political parties like Facebook's.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think even right now, between what happened between Israel and Iran, one of the main issues was regarding WhatsApp, that their messages were being leaked, or that's the WhatsApp was being used to locate the specific locations of a lot of politicians or people in the army, while it is supposed to be a very encrypted and very safe and very secure platform. And then I'm like, it's very evident how social media is being used.
Yeah. I mean, in the case of WhatsApp, technologically, it has been pointed out like some years ago that it's not as safe as it seems. It's very easy to track for state-level actors or even private players if you have the right tools, if you can afford the right to buy the right tools.
True. Immediately following this whole Israel-Iran and the WhatsApp thing, I think even in the US, people in the Congress are not allowed to have WhatsApp in their phone, something like that.
No, not in US. In Iran, there, yeah.
No, even in the US, it should check. I think so. Yeah, I read it somewhere.
Okay, US, but I don't know. But I heard that in
Let's
Iran,
confirm this. I might be wrong. Let's see.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, well, we are going a little off topic, but
that's fine.
Yeah, but fully not. Why was even Iranian government allowing Western platforms like WhatsApp, like allowing their parliamentarians or key people to use that kind of platforms. That was naive to say the least, and of course insecure.
U.S. Does the U.S. ban WhatsApp? Congress. WhatsApp.
But even what's more bizarre is the post Donald Trump is making on Truth Social.
June 3rd, 23rd. WhatsApp ban on U.S. House of Representatives device. It's all over the news. I think, just yesterday. Just yesterday. It's very recent. I think it's because of the whole Israel-Iran thing and how they got exposed that Israel was using, the geolocation information. It's crazy, right? What technology can do.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah.
It has become a very open front for another level of war, informational war, or whatever you call it. And then rising organic social influences as well. Soft power, I mean. This is massive too.
Things have evolved so much.
Yeah.
It can make you feel like the actual war is probably happening on this digital platform, not on the ground.
Yeah.
Especially if you look into the post by Donald Trump. Well, is the war actually, is the bomb dropping or not?
I was witnessing this one, right? And then, and this is a very strange conflict for the very first time because I'm very much into geopolitics and conflicts. This specific one, Iran had several pages which was posting about their plans, like they were talking straight out of the movies, like tonight you will see this happen. What I mean to say is like social media, even nations and political figures are using it as, I don't know what to call it.
It varies from country to country, culture to culture.
It's entertaining to call it the least.
Yeah, for them it works.
Yeah.
But what American politicians say in Congress is no less.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, the kind of bizarre thing they often say about Iran or when they go to like Kiev.
Yeah, funny enough, you told me about Tucker Carlson and that interview with
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz was like, he just obliterated his whole political career in that way.
Should be obliterated. The way you went after him.
Look at this page. Look at this. Look at it. It's trying to shoot some rats. Like, what the fuck? It's pure entertainment. I just look at tweets just for entertainment on these days.
No, not only that. What's actually real? A bomb falling? Is that real? Or Trump's tweets?
Here's the strange thing about social media, right? Again, we're going off topic, but that's fine. It's part of the conversation. And here's how I see social media. I find comparatively X or Twitter, as we may call it, it's chaotic. When people say that there's a lot of misinformation, yes, there is. But then, there needs to be a platform where things are not censored as well. That's how I see it, at least. It's not that you look at something on Twitter and you actually believe it. That's not how you go about it. You look at something on Twitter and then you verify it, right? You verify it a couple of times and then you trust the information.
But we are not equipped for that. The few thousand years, the way our cognition system has been built, we are not built to process so much information within such a short time. So it's very easy to manipulate our mind.
Yeah. It works both ways. So back to just to get a little bit of context, right? We'll have to start the summary once again because we'll make a short video out of this. But since Sheikh Hasina was in power since 2009 up until 2024, this whole thing went down, right? How was she perceived as, before the revolution, before this whole thing, how was she perceived as a leader by the Bangladeshi people? What was her image like?
strong.
Mm-hmm.
She has done things. Even there were talk about that on many aspects of politics or leadership, especially administrative part. She has like surpassed her father. Well, often considered authoritarian,
Mm-hmm.
but being strong. When you have too many unresolved sins of the past, too many things that you need to rectify, see, real politics is real politics. Often you have to be strong. If you are not strong, how do you try war criminals, define a phone call from John Kerry? At the same time, she gave the state confidence that there are things that we can do without the support of international partners like World Bank, especially the case of Podda Breeze and others, and also giving country a grand vision that we need infrastructure and other things. At the same time, her government always prioritized allocating significant portion of the budget in the social safety net. So, yes, a lot of corruptions happened, especially the banking sector and others. Well, they have to take blame for that as well, because if they want to take credit for the good ones, they will have to take blame for the bad ones as well. So those happened. But then very significant allocation of budget for the marginalized people, which often in opposition to prescriptions from international partners, she continued. So in general, she was considered a very strong leader.
I mean, there's one thing when you look at the data and actions in a what do you say, in an objective view, but then there's narratives which might muddy the rivers at time, the water at times, and might give you a different perspective, right? So among people, was she mostly popular or not unpopular?
If you look into social discourse before the movement, discourse among the people, not necessarily like very active political party members. Among the general people, I wouldn't say she was that unpopular.
Okay.
But big, large political parties, they were not allowed to participate in many processes, rightly or wrongly, sometimes the process was like imposed on her by the other parties. Like, see, like the boycott of election that I talked about. Now, if the second largest or one of the two largest political party decide to boycott the election on a perception that it will be rigged, but then if you boycott to delegitimize her, because politics can be a sinister thing. So this is nuanced and complex, but I would say I wouldn't say she was unpopular within the general people. See, one thing is very simple. When a country experiences 5-6% GDP growth continuously for like 2 decades, throughout her rule, people do not go out calling for her resignation. If it was the case that country was stagnant in economy and others, yeah, that would probably make sense. But the country experienced 5% plus GDP growth, even sometimes 7, throughout her time. And people had jobs and raised income and others. Inequality, yes, like many other countries. But the government also had very large safety net programs. Was the safety net programs transparent? Was there corruption, like her own party members were involved in? Engaging in corruption in distribution of those social safety net benefits? Probably yes. But the policy to have that significant level of safety net programs. So that also, that says that our government had a pro-poor agenda.
Given that she was not very unpopular, or mostly she was on the positive side or positive limelight for the people, would you say it was very surprising for you or the citizens of Bangladesh or Bangladeshi people that her resignation was demanded? Because what did you guys see it coming, or this was completely out of the blue?
For general people, it was kind of out of the blue.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So nobody saw this building?
No, not to this level.
Not to this level.
Not to this level.
Okay. So let's describe. I won't interrupt. Let's describe the whole movement. What happened from the whole quota thing till the end of the revolution? If you can just describe the timeline quickly.
For a definitive timeline for that.
Roughly what happened?
No, if I try to do that kind of chronology, like right now, there'll be missing parts.
Okay. But roughly, for the people who don't understand anything, just to sum it up, in generally what happened, because it might be different from what perception we had. For example, I told you the thing, her speech, for me, her speech was like the last straw, and then everything went chaotic. But according to you, what happened? So the quota revolution thing, and then the Supreme Court decides one thing, and then she accepts that, and then the resignations is demanded.
If it was a genuine, organic demand-led movement, so the demand was job quota. So once High Court resolved that, there was actually zero justification to continue that movement.
Yeah.
So then one has to ask why it was continued.
And why were people supporting it?
Why are people supporting it?
Yeah.
How many people?
Enough to throw the government? Apparently.
See, in a country of 180 million,
yeah,
if you can bring out 500,000 people in the street, it looks like quite big on the TV. And if your social media feeds is flooded with that, it looks quite big.
But the outcome speaks for itself. Enough people came on the streets.
Okay,
so the government had to change.
Now, talking about outcomes.
Yeah.
So you have a movement that demands job quota.
And
then suddenly the demand shifts to her resignation. Suddenly, all the political grievances that different political groups or parties have had over that decade all comes flooding. Now, what's happening all around the country? Almost 500 police stations were attacked.
At the same time? Coordinated attack?
Within a few days.
Okay.
Some of the police stations were under attack for 2-3 days. There are instances where in one police station, 13 police personnel were killed, burned. Many of the police stations were set fire to, all happening within a few days, even inside Dhaka city. Now, how does students who demand job quota suddenly morph into people go out attacking police stations, setting fire, and killing police officers? So the accusation is that she ordered police to, of course, to control the crowd, and but the rhetoric is she asked them to like kill.
Yeah, that's what we see.
Yeah.
So officially, yeah.
Yeah, fine. But for that now a trial is going on against her. So let's see how it comes. So let the court decide that. But then look at the court itself. So the court that has been trying war criminals during her rule, the same court is now trying her. So first the word was used is she committed genocide. That's a very heavy word. And then like mass killing. And the cases filed against her, if you see, like all in a bundle, like it's against her plus another 216 people who included in that list like film actors, film actresses, journalists. Now, what kind of actors? Like an actress who depicted her younger years in a biopic. Now, you have to make sense of it. So after the quota thing, and when the demand was like one demand, she has to go. The level of violence that escalated, unprecedented, and doesn't match with the earlier movement for quota. So why did it emerge and how? If you look into those videos and others, because things come out, and nowadays everybody has a smartphone and everything. So how come the students who wants job and a better life, maybe wants to go to Toronto, so we have to believe they went and they burned down police stations, killed 13 people. In one instances, they hang a police officer upside down for others to see. So who are they? Were they infiltrators? These are the questions we need to ask. Over time, definitely we'll know more. But there are many things that doesn't add up. And also, after the movement, when she had to flee. So the story goes that the mob entered her government residence, desecrated it. Now, even if you take it that it was a spontaneous mob, see, it's the residence of Prime Minister. So they were allowed to enter. They were allowed to enter her bedroom. They were allowed to take out her personal undergarments and dangle in front of the TV.
Who were in charge of the security? Who were supposed to be in charge of the security? The army?
At that time,
Mm.
no, legally, no. Army, no. At that time, army was asked to come out in the street.
Yeah.
And
They refused?
no, they came out and they said they wouldn't fire upon
Yeah.
people. So the police and the state sanctioned agencies were in charge.
Okay.
Fine. So if it was a mob, so mob was allowed. Now, if a mob is ransacking prime minister's residence, what does the security apparatus do? And then you see the residence of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the founder of the nation. There is residence that has been converted into a museum. Well, that has been attacked as well. And even later on, this year, the same residence was attacked again. And this time, they brought bulldozer and other things from city corporation. They demolished it. They burned it. Now, the interim government narrative is, people have had so much grievances. Fine. Is grievances, you can have grievances against me, but then does that make you legally entitled to, destroy my house? No. So then, why it has not been investigated? Why people who destroyed... See, after 50 years, you can say, hypothetically, Sheikh Mujib has not been good enough leader. Fine, we can debate on that. But his residence is a designated state museum where foreign dignitaries like presidents, prime ministers also visited. And that has been destroyed. Now, authorities can say, well, there were crowds. If we intervened, things could have even deteriorated. Okay, let's take that. Then for now, there's CCTV camera everywhere. Why don't you identify who did that? Because if you do not identify them, if you do not bring them to justice, then what message you are giving? There's a common discussion that's happening in Bangladesh all the time. You will read newspaper editorials every 3 days. Mob violence and mob justice. So groups forming and doing things. So that's one part. Now what's happening afterwards? This morning I saw news, a local Islamic group, and they demanded Hindi religious institutions to move. And the news also says police trying to mediate a resolve. See, the moment a group demands on religious ground that people belonging to other religion, they have to remove a physical facility. Well, that's already violence. So you have to bring them to justice. The police is... Now, if we talk about resolving this through social and other mediation process, well, that's not police job. That's a political process. So everything is being tolerated.
So basically, it's mob justice that the police are tolerating.
They are tolerating and not, well...
Encouraging, perhaps?
Maybe you can say that. Maybe I can talk about another thing that I wrote about.
I just don't want you to get in trouble.
No, but it's a very passionate piece of writing, man.
Yeah.
Because I saw the news and I had to write it. I almost wrote it in one go. the banyan tree. And banyan tree in South Asia has so much cultural, ecological, religious connotations. So there was a banyan tree in an area where Hindu, Muslim, everyone goes. Like Hindu can go and they can put what you call bind, what do you call it? Strings or something, to make wishes and others. And now, suddenly one Islamic religious group declared that, this is like corruption of religion and the tree must be cut down. Next morning, people come with electric saw and they cut it down. So the moment I saw the news, it felt like, it's like an assassination. So I wrote it and I titled it also, like Assassination of a Banyan Tree. Now, if we say, it was a spontaneous thing, what a spontaneous thing? I mean, what a spontaneous thing allows you to go and cut down. And those trees are also protected under various biodiversity and economic ecological terms. So some people feel like, or they make their own religious interpretation. See, historically, Bangladesh has been a place where synthetic kind of tradition, where Muslims and Hindus, rather, they shared many ritualistic things. Often you cannot even distinguish which is religious and which is cultural. So someone just wakes up and say, okay, we have to cut down this tree because it's corrupting religion. And you go and cut it down. And also, after the movement, they desecrated many, they means like various religious groups, subgroups and others, desecrated many like shrines, mazars, So they also had their own religious interpretation. Now, you can have that. That is something in a healthy society you do, you debate, you talk about it. And you resolve through discourse. But for law enforcers, like as a state and for the interim government, if somebody goes and digs up a grave of someone who's considered by saint by others, and you just overlook it. So if you continue to tolerate this, some say enable, but at least we can say at least being tolerated, whether systematically promoted or elaborate, enabled by the regime, that we do not, we need like more investigations. But why? Because this is causing so much cultural polarization within the society, making people taking law in their hands and also making differences sharper, which has not been the case in Bangladesh. So we are witnessing a very sharp changes in culture, attitudes towards religion, attitudes towards people belonging to other religion or like cultural icons. And the trend, like you have a facility that's named after someone who played an important role during 71 war, and suddenly you change it to some religious name. Now, based on what and who's taking the decisions? Changing an institutional name, is it only administrative decisions? And if the government is not making their positions clear, or often when these things are done without due process, well, then there are questions.
So with the revolution and everything that's happening, I mean, like, where do you think the country is headed now, and what does that mean? I mean, like, as a larger consequences of that to the whole South Asian region.
Well, let's first talk about Bangladesh. See, the expectations are high. Expectations among people and everyone. Now, what happened, if it was right or not, those are different things. You have two main incumbent parties ruling the country for 30, 40 years, mostly senior people, and they're running the country. And you have a demographic like 60% of the population, like under 30. So they want new things to happen, new language and everything. Now, the interim government, they have set up consensus commission, reform commission. Of course, we need reform. We need reform in many things. I mean, what South Asian or like countries in global South or even in the West do not need reform. Now, the question is, who's doing reform and the legitimacy of it? See, you change something. Now, sooner or later, there has to be an election. So some party will come into power. And the question is, so Reform Commission, they are consulting parties and taking suggestions. There's no transparency which idea is coming from whom and why. And if you really want to move forward, it has to go beyond parties as well. I mean, you invite few political party representatives. Now, Awami League is not invited. They still remain one of the two largest political party. So technically their activities have been banned. As a party, they have not been banned. That they can do only after due legal process. So if the party is not banned, so once the reform is completed, well, they should also have a say in it. And the Reform Commission is constituted mostly of, the person who's leading it, well, there's accusation that he holds an American passport. Now, technically that's illegal. And then he had a long career in the West. So he's inviting people, they're coming and giving opinions. How do we know those are like really representative opinions? So if the ideas of reform, those are being placed, they do not really come from like grassroots, then there is no chance of it being a success. And the legitimacy questions remains, because you want to do like fundamental kind of reform. Well, there has been even talk about writing a new constitutions. Initially, there was even a rhetoric and talk about changing the national anthem. Too much, right? I mean, you start a movement with job quota, and then within weeks you talk about changing your national anthem. Why? Because it's written by someone Hindu, someone who's like Indian. So these are not constructive rhetoric. And so the consensus and legitimacy question remains for reform. If it is not really inclusive, I mean, you can make it look like inclusive, but there has to be a process. Now, that's not laid out. Like, are they going to put the reform ideas for referendum? So they're not saying it. And there's also talk about, like, after the election, the party that comes, or they will have to agree beforehand that we will endorse them. So that sounds more like a deal, not like a reform.
Sounds like a negotiation tactic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who's negotiating whom? And so the elites and like powerful medias, they also have a say in it. Now, as I said about social media thing, now in a particular time you see a lot of like opinion columns and discussions and editorials coming up in newspapers. Does it necessarily make it representative? Because in the last 10 years, the same media had different languages. So maybe in next 5 years, they will have a different language. So we cannot take it as a representative view of different groups and segments of society. So that question remains. And the question of Awami League. Activities are banned. But on the other hand, the party that committed war crimes, they are roaming around. Their student wings are actively participating in political activities. And then the interim government, they are also facilitating formation of new political parties, like the student leaders and youth leaders themselves. They are floating a party called NCP. Whether they will get traction in the election or not, that is for something to see in the future. But as an interim government, if we are proposing reform, you're supposed to be neutral, supposed to be a facilitator of different elements and political segments within the society. So if you have your own horse in the game, so then you are no longer neutral. So these are the questions. And trial of Sheikh Hasina and other leaders for genocide, mass killings, and others, like very heavy words. How does it play out? I mean, there has been instances where cases has been filed and the plaintiff came out and said, oh, I don't know him, like, and also cases against actors, journalists, in the same bracket with Sheikh Hasina or the Awami League leaders for murdering people, for ordering mass killing of people. So those things will come up. And also, it's very ironic, like the whole movement started as to build a merit-based society. And now the relatives, family members or others who participated in the uprising, they're getting different kind of benefits. See, if it's a merit-based society that the movement wants to build, then why is that kind of benefit being handed out to them? It's like reintroducing quota but for a different kind of people. So there are many, many, many challenges, and eventually there has to be an election.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the election happens without the Awami League, see, a country has to go forward, not backward, right? And there is no perfect way of doing it. You go forward with whatever history you have. Of course, you aspire for something good, something better. You dream for a better society. But you do it with what you have. Now, Awami League is a party with such long history, such big support base and everything. If they're not allowed to participate in the election, so then the crisis remains, because eventually it will, there will be repercussions or in the future, because you don't have a political settlement or a consensus that enables you to move forward or take major policy decisions where you need like real consensus, like the corridor and other things that I referred to earlier.
So, yeah, please.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
So I'm like talking broadly. I mean, like there's uncertainty when it comes to what's going to happen or how it's going to play out in Bangladesh. But then, like, how do you see all of this going into the conversation regarding South Asia? What's happening?
Well, the whole world is going through difficult times, and there are geopolitical alignments and realignments. So the current interim government has been, trying to get close to China. At the same time, they have very strong rhetoric against India. See, Nepal probably knows it better than us. Like, Nepal is between two big countries, two giants, right? See, in South Asia, we'll have to be in the same neighborhood. Then where these sharp anti-India rhetoric is going to take us? Because geography is something like a family. You can't change it. It's like a destiny. So there has to be economic. See, over the last few decades, within South Asia, we talked so much about regional economic integration and so many things. And now, all being like reversed, because there are many transport corridor kind of projects, because northeastern part of India is quite far from their Indian other industrial or developed hub. Now there's so much mistrust and so much policy shift, and that some of those transit projects has been stopped. Now, what does it mean for economy like Bangladesh? If we want to we want people to live a better life. We want prosperity, economic development, and without cooperating with one of the largest neighbor who's all around you, how can you really build a strong economy? Now, if there are legitimate concerns about how Indian foreign policy plays out in South Asia, but that we resolve through dialogue discussions, not sharp street level rhetorics, which is same for Nepal and same for Bangladesh. And also countries like Bangladesh or Nepal, very often we become proxy playground for other main major players. So these Rohingya issues and the Arakan issues. So what do we do with it? Is the interim government going to open a corridor before holding an election? Because they have been reluctant to set a specific date for elections. Now, why is that? Like main opposition party, BNP, they are demanding a specific time frame, many other parties as well. So the interim government says between this and this month. The date even they are agreeing to, and that's because of political pressure from others. That's not too far, between next April to June. Say April to June, fine. So why don't you declare a date? You can say May 20 or April, not 1st of April, not like April Fools, because when they declared April,
they can always retract it, saying it was just an April Fool's joke.
Yeah, that's how it was also perceived. People laughed about it. So why is that? And also the administrative incompetence, one could say. All over the country, all across the institutions, from like National Revenue Board to other institutions. There's like demand and protest for everything. Today you see that this professional group, well, they are on a strike. Next day you see some other groups are also on a strike. Now, why is it happening? We need to understand. Because is it because the interim government is not competent enough to do with it, or they do not have acceptance? Like they wanted, the interim government proposed to divide the National Board of Revenue. Now, these are very major policy issues. Now, at one side you have Reform Commission, where you are inviting people to come out with suggestions, and they will come out with a set of recommendations. And before that process is completed, the interim government has already started a process to divide the National Board of Revenue. Why? Because IMF wants it. But do they have mandate to do that? And if you already execute a change, whether or not that's in the Reform Commission report, we don't even know. So then what's the point of having a Reform Commission? And of course, just because it's a transition government doesn't mean the world it suddenly stopped. The world is going on. So there are many precarious geopolitical decisions they will have to take, economic decisions they will have to take. So the deal they made with IMF, well, there's critique about that because the world is changing so fast. So many countries are moving beyond US dollar and others. So why this government is too eager to take credit from IMF, which is dollar-based? Because countries like Bangladesh should be signing bilateral deals either with India, to Nepal, or to like ASEAN, to trade in local currencies. One big example is the Russian-funded nuclear power plant, big project. Now you will have to pay, see, there's sanction and everything. So you cannot pay them with US dollars. So either you pay with Chinese yuan or Russian currency. So if that is an important thing, then why the government is so eager to take loan in dollar? And all of us have seen what IMF has done in Pakistan. I mean, imagine, like government in Pakistan, they are taking loan from private bank like Stanchart at 11% rate.
That's insane.
That's insane. So the same IMF, and now interestingly enough, the central bank governor we have under the interim government regime, he has been a career IMF professional and also very senior, like maybe he retired like 20 years ago. It's the same pattern that it's a youth-led movement, but in all important places, decision-making places, you find like very aging old people, some retired 20 years ago. They all have very westernized mindsets. Many of them work with American institutions or like World Bank and IMF. So they're coming up with that kind of agenda. Now, one can definitely say the Sheikh Hasina government, well, they were not blindly following the Western prescriptions. Podda Bridge funding is like a very big example. So if we take a turn and change from that direction, And that is not the direction the world is going. So those things are important. An election, of course, and organizing holding an election without one of the major party. Now imagine, like Awami League not being allowed to compete in the election, while Jamaat is. So those are like very ironic, and one has to ask, why is it happening? Whose agenda is it? Is it the under 30 people they are deciding it? Is it their aspirations that, we need to rehabilitate Jamaat Islami, a political party who never ever won more than 5% vote? So those are the questions that we need to ask.
I think we discussed everything very thoroughly, and for me it was a very important lesson on the entire region, especially Bangladesh's recent happenings. I mean, because what we've seen and what's the underlying truth can be very different. Towards the end, would you like to add anything that we might have missed?
Well, we definitely missed a lot of things because so many things happened within such a short time, and there are so many layers of issues that we can discuss. But as a closer, we have to pay notice to how the world is changing. What just recently happened in the West Asia and the economic realignment that's happening. Here in the Nepali magazine Spotlight, I wrote a few pieces recently. There was a very silent but very big economic conference in Kuala Lumpur, where ASEAN, GCC, and China, they all came together and took some very major decisions. And then there was another very important meeting that happened. That's often not reported in the mainstream media or who have a habit of republishing whatever Western media publish. The Africa-China Summit.
Mm-hmm.
Every African country participated except one. The smaller one, I forgot the name. And there was many common decisions taken, including not participating in Western sanctions and everything. I'm writing a piece that will be published in New Spotlight in the coming weeks. So these shifts, we need to pay more attention, learn more detailed nuances of it, and frame our national policies according to it. Because the world we grew up in and the world now going forward or moving into is not the same. And if we do not take right decision in the right time or align ourselves with the right geopolitical powers, taking account of our national interest, it will be late.
All right, Mr. Zakir, thank you so much for this conversation. And I wish you the best for your upcoming project. And I hope it succeeds.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Bye, everybody.